Hi, I'm Mrs. Wathen, and I'm one of the librarians at the Walnut Hills High School Library. And today I'm going to give you a book talk about fiction and nonfiction books about the Holocaust. And the Holocaust was the state-sponsored persecution and murder of Jewish people by the Nazi regime during World War II. And lots of books have been written about the Holocaust so that we can learn about it and we don't forget. And we hope that it will never happen again. So all the books that I talk about today, the fiction and nonfiction, are available as ebooks in either the Walnut Hills Library catalog or the public library catalog. First, I'm going to tell you about some fiction books about the Holocaust. The first book is called The Fighter, and this is by Jean-Jacques Greif. And Moshe is a boy who grows up in Poland, and he gets picked on a lot in school, so he learns how to fight. And when his parents move to Paris, he enrolls in this sports club and he learns how to box. He takes boxing lessons. When the Germans invade Paris, Moshe and his family are Jewish, and they get put on a train and sent to Auschwitz. And Moshe spends 3 horrible days on the train, and he finally gets to Auschwitz, and he's picked to go into a labor camp. And it's very hard labor. They have to fill pits or dig in a swamp or go down in the mine and dig rocks in the mine. But Moshe is very strong from being a boxer, and he's also very clever, and he finds ways to survive. Like he hangs around the kitchen and he gets a job there, and then he can pick up scraps in the kitchen. Then one day another boxer comes to the camp, and the guards decide to set up a boxing match between this new boxer and Moshe. And Moshe is strong, but he's been in the camp a long time. Can he really fight again against this new boxer? What will happen to Moshe? So this is a really good book about the Holocaust and living in Auschwitz. The second fiction book is called Auslander, and it's by Paul Dowswell. And Peter also grows up in Poland, but his parents are killed when the Russians invade Poland right before World War II. And Peter goes to live in an orphanage. And one day some Germans come into the orphanage and they pull Peter out and they say they have a family in Berlin, Germany, who wants to adopt him. So Peter moves to Berlin, and at first he likes his adoptive family. They have lots of good food to eat and warm beds and warm clothes. But then he starts learning more about his adopted father and his adopted father's scientific ideas. The father believes that the Germans are a superior race and that other races are inferior. And Peter starts thinking this is kind of strange. And then Peter gets involved in a resistance group and he makes a very bad mistake and he really gets in trouble and he's in terrible danger. The Auslander. Girl in the Blue Coat. And this is by Monica Hesse. And this is a good mystery if you like mysteries. Hanukkah is growing up in Amsterdam, and the Nazis invade Amsterdam, but Hanukkah is not Jewish, so she's free and she rides her bicycle around and she runs errands for people who want precious things that they can't get in the store, like sausages and cigarettes and chocolate. And Hanukkah can buy these on the black market and then deliver them to people. And one day she's making a delivery, and a woman comes out of her house and pulls Hanukkah in and the woman shows Hanukkah a hidden room and she said she'd been hiding a Jewish girl there. It's a secret hidden room. But all of a sudden, the Jewish girl had disappeared. She just vanished. And the woman is distraught because she doesn't know what happened to her. She just says that the girl was wearing a blue coat and she wants Hanukkah to try to find her. Now, while they're talking, some workers come in and they're moving some furniture out of the house that the woman had asked them to move this. And this becomes important later in the story. So Hanukkah starts riding her bicycle all over Amsterdam looking for the girl in the blue coat. And she uncovers a lot of secrets, a lot of mysteries, and it gets to be very complicated, really good. So this is a good mystery thriller, The Girl in the Blue Coat. And lastly, another mystery, The Prisoner of Night and Fog, and this is by Anne Blankman. And this is about Gretel, who grows up in Munich, Germany. And Gretel is the niece, the fictional niece of Adolf Hitler. And at first you don't realize that. She just calls her uncle Uncle Dolph. And then all of a sudden you realize that that's Adolf Hitler. And Greta is mourning her father, who was killed during the beer house push, which was when Hitler attempts to take over Munich in 1923 with his Nazis. And he was stopped by the Munich police. And Hitler was arrested, and some of the Nazis were killed, including Greta's father. Her father was killed by stepping in front of Hitler and taking the bullet for Hitler, which saved Hitler's life. And Greta is given the coat of her father, and she looks at it, and the bullet holes are in the back of the coat, not in the front. And she had always thought that her father was hit in the front when he stepped in front of Hitler. So she starts thinking that that her father might have been murdered. And she starts delving into this, and she gets help from a journalist. And she finds out a lot about what happened that night. So read what happened, read this book and find out what really happened that night and how Greta tracks down this mystery. The Prisoner of Night and Fog. Now I'm going to tell you about some nonfiction books about the Holocaust. The first one is called The Cage. It's by Ruth Mindky Sender, and it takes place in the Lodz ghetto in Poland. And the ghettos were just small communities, towns of Jewish people, and the Nazis built walls around these little towns so that the Jewish people couldn't get out. And Ruth grows up, this is a memoir, so it's her autobiography. Ruth grows up in the Lodz ghetto, and she grows up with her mother and her three brothers. Now, every week the Germans would come in and select people to go on the trains to go to the camps. And one week, Ruth's mother is chosen and put on the trains to go to the camps. So Ruth becomes mother to her three brothers, even though she's only 16 years old. And they really struggle to find food to eat, and they struggle to keep warm during the winter. And what will happen to Ruth and her brothers? How will they stay away from being chosen and stay away from the Germans? And what will happen to them? This is called The Cage. This is called In My Hands. It's by Irene Opkyke. And Irene also grows up in Poland, but she's not Jewish. And when the Germans invade, she is left alone because they even say she looks like she's German. And she gets a job at an ammunition factory where they use slave Jewish labor, and she works in the dining room serving the German soldiers. So one day she hears them talking, and they say that they're going to liquidate the ammunition factory and they're going to kill all the workers. And Irene has made friends with some of these workers, and she actually knows that one of them is pregnant. So she comes up with a daring plan to save the lives of 8 of these workers right under the eyes of the German soldiers. And it's very risky, very daring, very brave. And this is her story of how she kept these workers in her hands, in my hands, by Irene Opkyke. The next book it's not a memoir, it's just nonfiction, The Faithful Spy, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and the Plot to Kill Hitler. This is by John Hendrix. And this is an amazing book because John Hendrix is also an artist, and he drew all the illustrations in here, as well as he hand wrote the text. Everything is handwritten. So it's really amazing. And this is about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who became a Lutheran minister. He actually went to the university in America, in New York, and he traveled down south and was upset at the treatment that the white people and how they treated African Americans. And it reminded him of how the Germans treated the Jewish people. So when he went back to Berlin, he decided that ministers should really take civil action in the community. And he goes to work for a resistance group, and he becomes a spy to try to find people who are sympathetic to the idea of assassinating Hitler. So it's terribly dangerous work, and he puts his life in danger. He's very brave. It's just an amazing story. The Faithful Spy. And finally, The Prisoners of Breendonk, and this is also a new book. We just got it a few years ago. This is by James Deem, and Breendonk was a labor camp in Belgium that the Germans used for slave labor. And the author, James Deem, got special access to the archives, and he found that there were drawings. One of the prisoners had been an artist and drew pictures of the other prisoners. And so this book is filled with drawings by this one prisoner. It also has lots of photographs of the camp and the labor that they did. The work was very hard. The prison guards were very cruel, very, very harsh. And the prisoners were given hardly any food to eat at all. So it was a very, very cruel place. But the prisoners were very brave, very courageous. They didn't give up hope. And so this is a stunning tribute to those prisoners at the Camp Breendonk. So these are just a few of the fiction and nonfiction books about the Holocaust, and they give you an idea of the kinds of books that you'll be looking for. And I hope you can find a good book that you like, and goodbye for now.